I appreciate the cannabis culture because it is more open to sort of different characters, I guess, of people, all types of people. A lot of my art started out to be not so, I guess, a side effect of me being anxious and not really understanding myself and needing some sort of certain media to express myself in because I didn't know how.
Hi, everybody, and welcome to the ADHD Eaves Drop, where you can be a butterfly on the wall and listen in on my conversations. Today, I'm so excited to have a longtime friend of my son's, and I would consider him my friend now, too. He's been in our life for a long time, so I'm really excited to have Colton Parish with us, who is one of my favorite ADHD people in the world. Today, Colton and I are going to have a candid conversation about growing up with ADHD, about art and ADHD, and about the realities of cannabis and ADHD, along with strategies that he's used to help him control his ADHD symptoms. So stick with us. It's going to be great, and you're going to really enjoy this one. Hi, Colton.
Hi, Janine. Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, for a long time, I have been diagnosed with ADHD since I was little, and it's something that a lot of people kind of struggle with, but it's something I've kind of embraced, and I like to express myself through artwork. So throughout my life, I've definitely kind of put myself in a zone where I can express myself and just use artwork to put what's in my head onto paper or out in the world. It's a lot easier for me to kind of do those sort of things. So anything creative, such I've kind of dipped my toes in, if you will. Um, like I said, I'm an artist. I do a lot of physical art. That's what I like to do, mostly like woodcut prints or um, painting, clay making, pottery, stonework. Those type of things are really what I like to do. Um, I also do music. I like to play guitar, play piano, play drums. So I got my hands in a lot of different things, wear a lot of different hats, but mostly I'm a goofball more than anything.
You're one of my favorite goofballs. And so I just want to throw in there that you also work a job that is somewhat out of the norm.
Yes, I work in the cannabis industry. Nothing super super fun and exciting, but I do work in the cannabis industry, which is it's in itself exciting. I'm a warehouse manager. I basically make sure that all of our processing and production needs are met with the materials that they need to do those things. So what I do is develop processes to move materials on our digital system to get where they need to go. I deal with a lot of numbers and a lot of Excel sheets. So, like I said, not super exciting, but it's definitely necessary and can be fun at times. I like to really just put my hands into the processes of things to make sure they're very efficient. I like efficiency. That makes me calm.
Nice, nice. So you have mentioned two things, and actually I brought up one of them, but the first thing that you mentioned was your love of art,
Mhm.
which plays off of, I just recently did a podcast with Jack and Savannah about ADHDers in the arts and
Mhm.
what it is about the arts that kind of draws ADHD people to it. And so when you started talking about your art, and I know that you're very artistic, it really hit that chord. And then the other thing that you brought up that I wanted to talk about was why I wanted you to talk about the cannabis industry, because I have found, and I'm wondering if you have found the same thing, that a lot of people with ADHD are working in the cannabis industry.
Yeah. So I guess we'll start on the cannabis thing first, since that was the last thing. A lot of people, I think, with ADHD like to consume cannabis just because it's calming. It's better for the nerves, better than just smoking cigarettes, because that can be a little bit more damaging to your health and a lot more addictive. But I think cannabis has opened up a door to mental health that a lot of substances, if you will, have not been able to accomplish without the negative side effects, if you will. I appreciate the cannabis culture because it is more open to sort of different characters, I guess, of people, all types of people. And everyone's really able to enjoy it, while being safe with around others and being able to express themselves, in those certain states. So currently, I'm not smoking just because of job reasons, but previously, with in my last 10 years of consuming cannabis, I've really enjoyed and been able to connect with other people. It's a really good social drug. It's a good stepping point for others. Really just connect and let yourself unwind without having to feel like or pressured to be a certain person. You can just be yourself, and allows yourself to really open up and be more comfortable with yourself. And a lot of times, it helps people focus, which is great for ADHD people. Yeah, I really enjoy cannabis in and of itself. It's really helped a lot of people with ADHD, kind of curb those little overstimulated incidences.
Well, and I know the way you just described it sounds just like somebody might describe a glass of wine
Mhm.
or a beer,
Absolutely.
right?
Absolutely.
But there's one component that's different. In those two things, alcohol is actually more damaging to your body and oftentimes gets you in more trouble.
Oh yeah.
They don't happen as much with the marijuana or the cannabis.
Yeah, I agree. So cannabis really helps you with, like I said, calming yourself. The worst thing that's going to happen is that you're going to get really tired. Or if you're responsible, that's pretty much the worst thing that's going to happen. If you
There is some paranoia
There is
for some
paranoia.
people.
That's overdoing it. You have to know
Yeah,
your limits with it. Like I said, being responsible with it.
yes, yes. A lot of people who smoke marijuana also have ADHD.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And
Um,
what you're talking about, that cultural um aspect
mm-hmm.
of the marijuana or that social aspect you find draws a certain kind of person. Like you said, there's like this very eclectic group of
Mm-hmm.
people that are drawn to that in the same way as the arts when you think about it, because those populations are very similar, right?
Mm-hmm.
They're
Oh yeah.
eclectic. They're very different and they're goofy,
Oh
they're
yes. Oh yes. I would
I'm not
definitely
sure if I'm making my point, but
no, I would definitely categorize those types of people as being neurodivergent, in that type of that type of way. I find that, like, even just the simple process of just breaking down flour and rolling is just like very just being very methodical with it helps me just decompress. Like, I don't have to worry about anything else. I'm focused on what I want to do and what I enjoy. It allows me to just be in that state of mind without having to,
what would you
you
say
know,
to people who say that's not a good habit to have?
well, there's a lot of things that aren't good habits to have. I think overeating isn't a good habit to have. Um,
Over drinking,
Over drinking is not as a severe damaging habit to have. Granted, it
smoking
is
cigarettes.
smoking cigarettes. While they are both very sociable drugs, and they are drugs, are a lot more damaging to your health. Yeah, there's a
Yeah.
lot of things you could be addicted to. You can be addicted to chocolate. You can be addicted to exercising. There's like plenty of other things that are very healthy and not healthy to you, for you, that you can be addicted to. But I wouldn't consider weed being something that you are addicted to, and if you're responsible with it.
Well, and physiologically,
Mhm.
it's pretty hard to get addicted
I
to
think what
pot.
people really get more addicted to, if you will, is the feeling of being calm and relaxed and being able to just.
It's a psychological addiction.
Exactly. It is a psychoactive. Yes.
Yes, absolutely. And there's brain chemistry and all that stuff that goes
Hmm.
to that too. But it is interesting that it is a drug that is used to self-medicate with ADHD often.
Oh yeah, we've definitely come a lot farther, in the science of cannabis, even breaking it down to specific terpenes that allow for specific effects for like certain feelings that you want to have, or if there are certain ailments that you have, like cancer patients even. There's a lot of, like nervous system It helps with that as far as like your pain reactors. It dulls those so you don't feel as much pain, which is why also in sports they drug test for it because you don't feel as much pain when you're consuming. You can also it goes as far as the fact or at least to the effects of being more creative, being less nervous, less anxious,
Well, let's bring that
being
creativity
sleepier.
thing in there.
Yeah.
You're artistic anyway, because you've been artistic since you were a kid, and I don't think we really, I mean, how long have we known each other?
Oh, since I was in Little League baseball with Nate. So
Yeah,
very long time.
a very long time. And I've always known you to be an artistic kind of kid.
Hmm.
I remember when you and Nate moved into the dorms and I brought you the Legos because you wanted to build with the Legos. And I just wonder how that changed your art.
As far as like consuming cannabis,
Hmm.
a lot of my art started out to be not so, I guess a side effect of me being anxious and not really understanding myself and needing some sort of certain media to express myself in because I didn't know how. Which happens to a lot of people growing up with ADHD just because their emotions in it are everywhere. Um, so it started out just me being able to decompress and put what's in my head onto paper or onto a canvas or however whatever medium I'm using. But when it comes to consuming cannabis and art, it just allow like the ideas are just way more expressive and a lot more, I guess, a lot deeper with thought, just because I'm not so held back with anxiety or stress. That's not what I'm thinking about. I'm thinking about what do I want to accomplish with this artwork? Or if I'm not even thinking about that, it's just how do I feel right now? And what makes me happy? What makes me sad? And how can I express that? And how can I process everything that's happening in my life?
Art isn't necessarily about a finished product.
No,
It's about the process of doing it and enjoying that process altogether. And I've taken back up my drawing and have been drawing a lot lately.
that's awesome.
Actually thinking about selling some prints,
That's sweet. Sweet.
but so yeah, I've been really enjoying my art lately too, and of enjoying that process. And as you're talking about it, you're like all the things that you're doing and thinking while you're doing your art is all about the process. It's not about
Mm-hmm.
that finished product.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Because like there's going to be a lot of hiccups along the way, and you kind of just have to not care about that. Like you said, it's about the process, not the finished product. And I don't always know what I'm going to make. It's just because like I'm focused on how I feel in the moment, not so much of how I feel about the product, like the actual art piece.
So
And
this is so interesting because I think you'll appreciate what's happened with my drawing. And I don't know if I'll leave this in here, but I want to tell you about it.
okay.
I rediscovered drawing when I couldn't draw with my right hand and I was like, I'm bored. I couldn't use my right hand. I'm bored. I'm going to try to draw with my left hand, right? Well, I have
Oh, yes,
drawn.
different sizes of the brain. Yes, I love
Yeah,
this. This is
right. So
awesome.
I'm like, so I haven't drawn in like 10 years. I just
Oh.
put it down and I just really haven't done anything with it. And I approached it way differently
Mm-hmm.
with my left hand. And for some reason, then it sparked in me because when I was drawing with my left hand, it was like it was so hard to draw that I was just letting what I drew turn into something, you know. And so then I'm like, why don't I do this with my right hand? And so I prep my paper, which I never used to do because a white piece of paper is just daunting.
Oh, yes.
So I prep my paper and then I just look at it and I put my pencil to the paper, and sometimes it comes out of the pencil, and sometimes it comes out of the paper, but sometimes I don't know where it comes from. And I'm surprised at the end by what I get because it's like I had no idea I was going to create that. Where did that come from?
Oh, yes. I think that type of art is called expressive because you're not, there's no fixed, no
Sitting down to,
focus point of
yeah.
which you're trying to draw something specifically like an elephant or a chair. You're just expressing yourself with your pencil. Like you're doing strokes on your with your pencil of how you want to, or not even how you think about wanting to draw. You're just drawing it. And
Yeah,
that
it's just
allows so
happening.
much more freedom and less stress. Like you said, you're not worrying
Well,
about
it
what it
became like a
actually is.
meditation. Do
Oh yeah.
you feel like that?
More so when I'm like creating clay stuff, just because it's so much more malleable. And I don't have to erase things. So that's nice. Even to the point of like I stay away from pen art just because it makes me very nervous to put something down permanently.
Oh, I
Like
use my eraser so much with my
oh
pencil
yeah, oh yeah.
drawings.
I my eraser's gone by the time I even get halfway through the pencil usually. So um, I stay away from that just because that's a little stressful for me. I would like to dive more into that so I can be more comfortable with the expressiveness of just putting something down. It does become, like you said, a meditative state where I can visualize. I'm able to visualize things in my head, like in the round, like in a 3D picture. Like I can rotate it in my head, which is it's
Mm.
easier for me to sculpt things out of stone, just because I can see what I want and just go at it, not even think about it. Like there were times when I was in my art studio in college where I was there for hours and hours just chipping away at a block of stone, not exactly knowing where I was going, but I knew what I wanted to express out of it, learning the tools that I'm using, learning the medium that I'm working with. The
Hmm.
more you just go at it with any type of medium, you have a better understanding of what tools you're working with and how you can influence what you want. So
So
that
what was your medium of choice when you were a kid? Probably pencil, right? To keep yourself
strangely
busy?
enough, it was not a pencil, it was clay. My parents bought me tons and tons and tons of clay.
Really?
Tons and tons of clay. I loved all the colors and I loved making like little figurines. I would make like fingers, I would make like little animals. That was more enjoyable for me than pencil, just because it was hard for me to really like focus on drawing, because it took a long time for me when I was younger to really sit down and work on a piece of art from like a drawing for more than like 20 minutes. I wanted to go do things, and being able to physically manipulate the thing allowed me to be more interactive with the medium,
Hmm.
and maybe not I wouldn't say hate it, but I enjoyed it way more because I could be so physical with it. So like the clay kind of moved on to something that was a little more down the alley of what style of art I want to do. I like Art Nouveau and natural, which is like more natural sort of art, or the also natural sort of art, like the it's a French style, which they use more of natural shapes. But I did woodcut prints, which was I didn't have to worry about putting different values into a drawing to pop out different shades or different strokes of a pencil to really like bring out more of like a shape or anything like that. I could just carve into a piece of wood and then make a stamp pretty much, and like create different textures by different patterns of how I carved and different angles of how I carved. And that it's because it was more physical, I enjoyed it so much more. I was able to sit there and focus on it and just kind of tune things out. And that really is what became more of my meditative state. I would be carving a piece of wood for hours and hours and hours until I was like, yep, that's it. That's it. That's what I got.
Colton, how old were you when you found out that you had ADHD?
So my mom and my dad were never diagnosed. But my older brothers, well, I'm the youngest of five, and my brothers were all diagnosed with ADHD. So we pretty much had a very telltale factor that I was gonna have ADHD when I
You
was
had an
born.
ADHD family, just like I
Yes.
have.
Yes. But I was officially diagnosed when I was around 7, I believe. So and I was also medicated when I my parents kind of knew there was something up when I was struggling in school around like the third grade. Um, but the teachers brought him. brought them in and was like, your kid just can't focus. He's bouncing off all the walls. He's like not doing his homework. He's constantly talking. He's running all over the place, and like they wanted to hold me back really in school, but my parents knew that it wasn't that I didn't want to focus and I didn't want to do well. It was just because I couldn't focus and I couldn't sit still. So at that point they're like, it's probably time to get him tested. So I was tested, had actually like ADHD, not ADD. I was prescribed Concerta, which I also had major depression as well. So that kind of worked both ways. It's not so much of a focus drug. It's more of like controlling more of your feelings, less anxiety and less it's like a happy drug, but more it's really more focused on like keeping me more tame. And while it did help, um I my parents found I was more acting like a zombie when I was taking the medication. I was, yes, not bouncing off the wall, so they appreciated that. But I wasn't exactly myself when I was taking the medication. So they didn't they didn't really like that. So I got prescribed another medication. I was on Adderall, which was great, but was also a little too much for me at the time. Um, and I had taken medication all the way up until I was 20, which the reason for that is because I had the same, I guess it would be psychiatrist, but she had unfortunately passed away.
Mm.
So I was forced with a decision of either continuing taking medication, finding another psychiatrist and getting retested and going through the motions. Um, at the time, it was really just too much because I was in college. There's a lot of things going on in my life, and taking medication was kind of, I didn't really feel myself. I didn't feel like I was able to express myself because I was being dampened by medication. Um, which is not exactly everyone's feeling on being medicated for ADHD. It helps a lot of people out, and I'm still for taking medication for ADHD. But I decided to stop, and it was a rough start. Obviously, I had been taking it for the majority of my life, pretty much all my life. Um, but I stopped and I focused on bettering my health and my diet, making sure I was taking care of myself. And it really helped me be less focused and dependent on taking medication to focus myself so I can lack on the responsibilities of, and I'm not saying this is for everyone. Um, I had a different level at that point. I had understood my ticks, if you will, or more of what my triggers were for anxiety and sort of responsibilities I had as an adult now that I didn't understand when I was younger. Um, I guess at that point, I was ready to not be dependent on medication. I also didn't have a lot of money because I was a broke college kid. So
Right.
that was a lot for me to take over. But
So at this point, you don't take medication?
I do not. I haven't taken medication since I was 21, 22.
Okay. And you are now.
I am 29 now. So I've been,
Ah, Colton.
I know. So I've been off of medication for a little over 7 years now. Um, at that point, I had started smoking marijuana. I had been regularly consuming marijuana. So while, yes, I wasn't taking ADHD medication, I was still medicating of some sorts. And I felt better using cannabis than I did using medication, ADHD medication. Um, it wasn't so dampening, and so it didn't like flip a switch for me like ADHD medication did.
Mhm.
It was more of me easing into a state of me being relaxed and able to process what I was going through and still stay focused without having to just completely zone out or it, I wouldn't say zone out, I guess, but I don't know. It's just different. It felt better.
So now that you're not smoking again, like you're not using cannabis at
Hmm.
all, how's the ADHD going?
So the past few months have been just like with any other habit. The reason I really stopped, I had a stint where a couple years ago, I had stopped because I'd had just extreme life changes, and it kind of put me into a state of fight or flight for 2 weeks, and that was a lot. And consuming cannabis and doing that, like you have mentioned, the paranoia aspect, it was just extremely overstimulating for me. So I took a break and then came back to it once I slowly started figuring things out. But now that I had already done that and I understood the effects that it would have on me, it was easier for me to take the break and stop consuming cannabis, just because I also didn't have as high as a tolerance, because I had at that point a couple years ago I had been smoking for about 7 8 years straight without stopping.
Hmm.
um so I had a pretty high tolerance at that point. Have you heard of dabs? I'm sure you've heard of concentrate and dabs. Okay.
Yeah.
So I was doing a lot of dabs instead of smoking flower, but I enjoyed flower more than I did concentrate. Just because concentrate doesn't necessarily have the same effect as flower, just flower does, because a lot of the times in the process of it, a lot of things are distilled out or processed out. And so they'll have to mix in, like with your distillate that you're smoking out of your vape, they introduce terpenes, which is considered what is the effect, like what determines the effect, like your sativa and indica, and all the different types of strains of cannabis that they are, all have their all individual effects or a combination of effects to you. With concentrate, it is much more intense. As far as a head high comes to the psychoactive itself, it's much more what's called like delta 8 or delta 9s, which is the actual psychoactive in cannabis, the THC. With flower itself, there's a lot more that is already naturally derived out of the plant that allow you to, in my opinion, enjoy the flower, enjoy cannabis so much more, because you're actually getting the full, more organic feeling and effect of it, more true effect.
Back to that question though,
Yes, yes.
how's the
Um,
ADHD going?
yeah, see, yeah, it's still there.
It's still
It's
there.
still there, still there. But I understood at that point of when this next time when I stopped, that I was going to have to be more responsible with the situations or my triggers that put me in a state of being overstimulated. I had to be more responsible about that, and I
What
had
does
to.
that look like?
Um, it was a struggle for a little bit, but I had to distance myself from even some of my friends just because they wanted to constantly just smoke, or they want to talk about things that were very uncomfortable for me to talk about at the time. Change my habits, change my eating, my diet. I had to change my diet. I had
What'd
to
you do with your
exercise.
diet?
So it was more whole foods, more high protein, lots and lots of protein, lots of water, staying away from lots of sugar, those kind of things that do have an effect on your just your brain chemistry at all. Eating healthier will help you process things a lot easier. I mean, just simply staying away from coffee, because staying away from stimulants.
You're speaking terrible words out loud.
I know.
Staying away from coffee.
Yeah,
So
I
you don't
know.
use coffee to
Um,
help with your ADHD. Do you use
I
caffeine?
I use it when I am really tired, but I understand that there are side effects of using caffeine or even just like energy drinks. I get overstimulated because I can't calm down.
So it's not calming for you because like a lot of people with ADHD, and I'm wondering if that's why those stimulants weren't working great for you because a lot of people with ADHD will be calmed and become more focused.
It works great for a little bit for me, but if I'm not drinking water all day and I've because I'm not thinking about it, because I'm focused, I'm so focused on what I'm doing, then it becomes an issue. Um, like physically, because I'm not taking care of my body,
Hmm.
and your body reacts to that. Just everyone reacts differently, but for me, it was like, hey, you have a massive headache right now, and you're not going to focus because you haven't had any water all day because you have been focused on this one thing.
How do you remember to drink your water then?
I set timers if I have to. When I notice other people drinking water, I'm like, oh hey, I should probably drink water. But I have this giant, it's like a massive thermos that I take with me. So like when I set it on my desk at work so that when I glance over or I get to my desk, I'm like, hey, you should drink that. Um, Part of the habits that I've had to develop is like there's this thing where when you have ADHD that you don't always want to do things or you want to do things but you forget about doing them. And I've kind of developed a process for me. I've kind of adopted it is like the 3 second rule. It's more of if you don't do it within 3 seconds, then you're probably not going to do it, which is a lot truer for ADHD people than most. Just because by
Oh
that time
yeah,
I forget about it. But
absolutely.
but I know that there's things that I really should do. And if I want to be a better person, if I want to have better habits, then I need to do those things. I have to be responsible about that. And that has helped me just develop better habits and get things done more effectively than it has ever in my entire life. So
So it's interesting that this time is aligning with so when you talk about the science of ADHD and the brain development of ADHD, there are certain parts of our brains, the frontal lobe especially, that don't develop as quickly as everybody else's.
mhm.
Research has shown that it's for an average neurotypical person, your frontal lobe does not completely develop until you're like 25 to 30. You are possibly moving into that period of time where your frontal lobe
Yes, finally.
has matured.
Yes,
So that could be helping as well. And it's not like it happens overnight, but it's one of those
right.
things that when people say in their 30s, they're like, well, those things seem easier now. It's because they are.
Hmm.
So that's really awesome that that's happening for you.
Yes. ADHD has calmed itself down just a little bit, which
Well, and
is which is nice.
people's ADHD throughout their life changes.
Hmm.
And there are people who would qualify as having ADHD based on the DSM definition as a kid, and then not as an adult, but then again later in life
Mm.
be diagnosable again. So it's really you have ADHD or you don't, but according to the DSM, it's really about how well you cope with it.
Ah, that makes so much more sense.
It's if you're really using your strategies and you're not having major life effects of it,
Hmm.
you wouldn't qualify based on the DSM.
Okay, cool. I see now.
So it's interesting. I wonder. I mean, I think though you still have your ADHD,
Oh
but I bet
yes, I still have my
you are
hyper
in a phase
moments.
where you've figured out strategies that are working for you, coping methods that are working for you. A lot of people I work with are people who later in life figure out for some reason my coping methods aren't working anymore. And all of a sudden, they're getting diagnosed with ADHD as adults, right? And they look back at their childhood and they're like, well, yeah, I really had ADHD. But then there's this period of time where they were able to manage it, right? And that's what happened to me is I managed mine really well. And then and with women, certain times in their lives, like menopause, things changed too. And suddenly none of my coping mechanisms were working anymore. My strategies weren't working anymore. And that's when I ended up getting diagnosed. I've had ADHD my whole life though.
Right. I can see how it comes in like it's like more of like a wave. That's cool. Hopefully I can stay out of this the other one again. I would really appreciate you staying in this more of this state.
But the more you know about building those strategies and being
Mhm.
flexible, because
Having those tools, yes.
having those tools in your toolbox and then knowing that anybody who knows that they have ADHD also knows that they don't work forever. All of a sudden they stop working because they lose their novelty, their interest or whatever. And you have to be ready to make more.
Hmm. Oh yeah. Like I still get overstimulated. I still have hard time processing change, immediate change. And I have a hard time with being in smaller spaces. Like if things aren't organized, then I kind of freak out a little bit more now than I ever have been. When I was growing up, my room was a disaster, but now it's more like I really need this wire to be wrapped up a certain way or it's going to bother me. Like I don't understand how that worked, but it just I don't for me if I have it a certain way, I don't have to think about it. I don't have to worry about it.
Mhm.
Not so much that I'm staying up late at night thinking about the wire didn't wrap right, but in those moments where I see it, I'm like, I should probably take care of that. I should probably just take care of that, which allows me to like, yeah, I know it's taken care of. I know that when it's wrapped right when I need it, it's not going to be bent up. I know where all my pencils are when I need to, so I don't have to forget where all my pencils are or the pencil I just had. I put it right back where I had it, so I don't like. That's another one of the habits I had built out. It's like don't just set things down, put it away, like finish all the way to do the follow through, which I know a lot of people struggle with having ADHD. Yes, just because it's hard to focus on that, or you are distracted, or want to focus on something else. Like you don't always get to choose, which still happens to me. Like TV, oh my gosh, I am so terrible when it comes to TV because I just lock in. It's just like it's
Hyper
so
focused.
I'm so hyper focused on TV or even video games just because they're very stimulating for me.
Mhm.
And like just there's so many colors, there's so many moving things. I like it.
I like it.
I like it.
I like it a lot.
Exactly. So I guess I am thankful that I'm in a position now that I can do those things. But like you said, things change, and you have to adapt to those things. You have to develop more tools. So I'm looking forward to be able to do those things now, to develop more tools when I need to. I'm not so scared of having ADHD anymore, which is great. I have a much more positive thinking now, which is good.
So you just said something really interesting. I'm not afraid to have ADHD anymore.
Yes. When I was growing up, or in like a majority of my life, I was afraid that I would forget very important things, like birthdays or dentist appointments or doctor's appointments or the assignment that I needed to turn in last night, or just pretty much any and all things that I deemed important. I was anxious about missing, forgetting to talk to my friends because if they're not in front of me, or if there's like a thing that's not in front of me, I forget that it exists. Not intentionally, but it just happens.
Very
So
common.
very common, very
Very
common.
common.
And
People
I
don't
feel so
understand.
bad.
Yes, we can actually forget people exist.
Oh, completely. Like I have my brother lives in Hawaii, and sometimes I go months without talking about him. Not because I don't want to talk about him or talk to him. I just forget to. It just doesn't come up to me because it's not in front of me.
Out of sight,
It,
out of mind.
exactly.
Mhm.
And like that does frustrate me, but I understand it's a condition that I have and it's something that I have to be okay with.
Yeah.
Um
It's always shocking when you think of a friend that you haven't thought about in like a
oh
couple of years. And then you're
yeah.
like,
Just
shoot, did they call
pops
me last?
yeah, are they still alive?
Are
Are
they still
they
waiting for me to call? Like literally like, oh no.
mm-hmm.
And I miss them so much. Suddenly miss somebody that you almost forgot existed. But all of a sudden that feeling comes back in the now of, I really want to see this person.
Oh yeah. But like going back to me having being afraid of forgetting things or just not being able to focus on what I want to or is important. I understand that there's a certain way that my brain has to do things in order to remember things. So having those tools allows me to not be so upset with myself and anxious about what I'm getting into, because I have those to rely on. If there are things that I forget, I'm not so hard on myself anymore, because it just, these things happen. Just like
Yeah.
everyone else, everyone forgets things sometimes. You have to be not so hard on yourself. You have to let things go sometimes.
Well, Colton, we have been chatting for quite a while and we have
Yes.
covered some great topics. I
Yes.
always have one question at the end for everybody, and it's not always the same one.
Hmm.
But my question for you is, what would you tell that 7-year-old boy today?
Relax. Things will get better. It's okay.
Awesome. Well, Colton, I want to thank you so much for coming on. And honestly, I've just really enjoyed this conversation and hope that you'll come back and chat with me again.
Oh, absolutely. This was fantastic. I really appreciate you taking the time to have me on here. Thank you so much.
Oh, absolutely. So, if our butterflies on the wall enjoyed our content and enjoyed what they listened to, what should they do?
Oh, hit that subscribe button.
Absolutely. And we'll see you next time.